Don't confuse a harder path for your adult child with an impossible one. Hey there, I'm Jonathan. I am a family therapist. I am the one who hosts this group. I have been working for several decades as a family therapist and an addictions counselor, working primarily with families with teenagers or young adults who are really struggling to move forward. And that's what this group is about. This is where we come together and we share some knowledge, we share some stories and some experiences, and we learn how to move forward. So I'm glad that you are here. So tonight, I've titled this Don't Confuse a Harder Path for Your Adult Child with an Impossible One. And I'm really excited about this talk because I hear this from parents all the time. And honestly, I think it's one of the biggest reasons why families get stuck and stay stuck, right? Parents will tell me about everything that their adult child has been through. They'll say they have ADHD, they struggle with anxiety, they were bullied, they went through a difficult time. We as a family, we went through a difficult divorce. They've had depression, they've gone through a terrible breakup themselves, they've always struggled socially, things like that. Parents are telling me the real difficulties that their kids have been through. And I want to say something right from the start that's very important, right? All those things matter. They are all real problems. They all make life more difficult, right? I'm not minimizing any of those struggles. In fact, I have worked with many, many young adults who have a legitimate diagnosis, right? They have significant anxiety, trauma histories, learning disabilities, autism, ADHD, depression, real challenges. And those are real obstacles. But here's what I've noticed. Over time, many loving parents begin to change what they believe their adult child is capable of. And this is big, right? Because without even realizing it, their compassion has slowly turned to lowering expectations, right? So the thinking and the phrasing starts to sound like this. You know, maybe a job is just too much for their anxiety. Maybe independent living isn't realistic. I think they're always going to need me, right? They're never going to be able to keep up with things on their own. So please hear me. I am not criticizing parents. I completely understand how they get there, right? When you watch someone struggle, someone you love struggle, every instinct in you is to want to protect them. You don't want them to be overwhelmed, right? And you don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want them to fail. You don't want them to experience pain. That is love. And that's real, right? I'm not blaming. But here's the question I want you to think about. Has your compassion slowly turned into a loss of confidence in what your adult child is capable of? Because those are two very different things. Compassion versus a loss of confidence. Here's something I've learned, right? After many years of working with families, a harder path is not the same thing as an impossible path. I want to say that again. A harder path is not the same thing as an impossible path. So, yes, ADHD may mean your adult child, they have to learn different strategies, right? Their anxiety might mean that progress is going to happen much slower, right? Their past trauma, that may mean that they're going to have to experience healing while they're learning how to move into adult responsibilities, right? And even autism, right? Having autism, it may mean that independence looks different than somebody else, right? All that is true. But none of those realities automatically mean that your son or daughter cannot continue growing. It may look different. It may take longer, right? They might need treatment. They might need more coaching. They might need more accommodations. By the way, the best accommodations do not remove expectations. They help you meet expectations, right? I see parents and educators, people, helping professionals just get that confused all the time. A good accommodation doesn't remove the expectation. It helps them find a way to meet that expectation, right? So here's what I'm saying. Different does not mean impossible, right? Difficult does not mean impossible. Sometimes I worry that parents unintentionally begin treating a capable young adult like they're a permanently fragile one, right? And when that starts to happen, something changes in the family. You can see it, right? Parents begin doing more and expecting less. They step in sooner, they protect more often, right? And it's not because they don't love their child, it's because they've quietly stopped believing that growth is possible. One distinction that I think is really important, it's this. You can understand somebody's struggle without lowering your expectation for their growth. So, compassion doesn't require giving up hope, and support doesn't require that you take over their responsibilities. Right? I'll go this far. I'll say one of the most compassionate things that we can do is continuing to believe that someone is capable of taking that next step, right? Maybe that next step is they get a part time job, or it could be they start making their own appointments. Maybe it's contributing financially at home, or maybe the next step is just that they start continuously going to therapy. They need to learn to manage their own responsibilities one step at a time. And it's true. Those steps may be smaller than somebody else's, right? They may happen more slowly because the struggle, the difficulty they're experiencing is real. It's a real challenge, it's a real struggle. But they can still take steps forward. And that's what we're looking for, right? It's growth, not perfection. It's movement, not comparison. So if you're a parent listening to me, I want to leave you with one question. Have you started believing that your adult child's path is impossible? Or is it simply just harder? Because those are not the same thing. One of the greatest gifts that you can give your adult child is not removing every struggle, right? But instead, continue to believe that they're capable of growing through those struggles. That doesn't mean you rescue them. And it doesn't mean you force them either. It also doesn't mean that you ignore legitimate challenges. It means you hold on to hope, right? That means you believe in their potential. They need you to believe in their potential, right? Having compassion for their struggle, you got to be in that place, right? Have compassion for their struggle, but don't let your compassion rob them of your confidence in them. Because one of the most powerful messages your adult child receives, it's not always what you say, right? It's what they believe you believe about them, right? If they start sensing that you stop believing they're capable, that message can be very incredibly discouraging, right? So you got to find that way to continue supporting them in ways that help them move forward to greater independence, even if that journey looks differently than what you once imagined, right? And I know these situations can feel so overwhelming. So please don't give up. There is a way forward, right? And as always, I would love to hear your thoughts. right? If you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you want to know more, if you want to go deeper, let me know, right? Like, what are some of the challenges your adult child has faced, right? Where it has felt difficult in knowing how do I help? How much do I help? And how do I encourage them to keep moving forward? Right? Let's get the conversation going. And remember, get on that email list. Pay attention to the new supports that we have. We do go deeper. There are more resources, so check that out. Thank you for watching whenever you watched. I'm glad you're a part of this group. God bless. I'll talk to you guys later.